Back. Thank you for joining me in that. My father was in the military and stayed overseas after the Second World War for a year on reconnaissance duty to try to prevent a resurgence. As a result, he came back to Canada with TB, and unfortunately his re-entry medical didn't happen for the next year and a half, by which time he had half of one lung. And he lived the rest of his life with that legacy, as well as things he never wanted to talk about. And he still showed up every day for us as the best father anybody could ever hope for. And so I think of him today and everyone who was with him. Okay, so today we're going to drill down further on what started the clutter buildup, right? Unless the clutter that you're dealing with in your environment right now violates local fire codes and ordinances, so bylaw, that kind of thing, representing an immediate threat to your safety, the safety of others, here's how I want you to start approaching this. Consider taking your journey with me to getting uncluttered by getting help for the underlying reasons you hoard. Ask yourself 3 questions. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it? How can I get enough of it to make a difference? Rather than making the sole focus of the cleanup of your environment, the truth is that unless you focus on 2 essential components for managing this behavior, even if it falls short of a disorder, the likelihood of having sustained success if you don't address both essential components is very low, all right? Many people with hoarding behavior, even though it isn't severe enough to tick enough boxes to qualify to be a disorder, can attest to the fact that without addressing these components, these 2 essential components, they have experienced repeated relapse, all right, with demoralizing results. So anybody that is out there feeling to any degree that way, I want you to realize it isn't your failure. It's that you're not addressing the 2 essential components basically at the same time. The first essential is getting help for the underlying reasons you hoard. All right. And the second is, let's not kid ourselves, cleaning up the decluttering, because the decluttering of your environment is the outward manifestation of your internal feelings and life. All right. The condition of your spaces is the consequence of this behavior, this problem, or this disorder not being identified and treated effectively. And that means something very simple. It means that you are not doing the following. So listen long and hard. If you've got to go back and re-listen to this podcast after to get, because it's chock-a-block full of information, all right? But the podcast is there for you to go back to and go back to. You don't have to overload yourself today. Just let yourself absorb whatever you reasonably can right now. So that means you're not getting the help you need in time and in the way that makes it possible to effectively manage your clutter with your needs. It means that you're not developing the awareness you need of the problem that is in front of you. And you're not building the readiness to deal with it. Where is your motivation? Where is your focus? Where is your energy going instead? And what is that giving you in return to overcome this problem that makes you feel uncomfortable at the least, ashamed, overwhelmed, and defeated at the most? Where is it going? Because you have that energy inside you. You do have the ability to focus somewhat. Where is it going instead of sharing it with this goal? It means that you're not figuring out a user-friendly way to be certain enough of your preferences about what should stay and what should go. It means that you're not developing, and I can live with it, decision ability to understand and adapt when your preferences are not wise choices. Your preferences about what comes in and what should leave, what needs to leave. Now, one of the things I've done, because I also blog for Psychology Today with Suzanne Cronkite, I've posted the questions. Should I bring this home? Should I let this go? On the website. And when we come back to the general meeting at the end, remind me to ask Jim where he's put it on www.hoarding.ca. Okay? It also means possibly that you are not respecting your pace, your own individual pace, based on the focus you have available, the energy that you can summon up for working at the tasks that are needed, necessary, okay, to regain a reasonably healthy and safe place to live. If you don't respect your pace, that's why I say, when you start out with 15 minutes a day. What are you doing with 15 minutes a day? You're starting to learn to self-regulate. Anybody can do anything, all right, for 15 minutes. Set the timer. 15 minutes isn't forever. And work at a pile that is particularly irritating you. And if you can make yourself do that every day, and know this, there isn't one day, not one day, where you're going to say, whoa, I can hardly wait to do my 15 minutes. Okay, that does not exist. You've either had way too much coffee or something else is afoot, because that's not reality. Nobody wakes up and says to themselves, gee, I can hardly wait to do something I really don't want to do. And I get 15 whole minutes to kill myself at it. Yeah, no, 15 minutes. What you're really doing is starting that path to self-regulation. When you make a deal with people, you give your word to people. I'm betting wherever it's possible, humanly possible, you keep your word. When you give your word to yourself, that you will devote 15 minutes of uninterrupted focus, perseverance, and motivation and energy. You keep your word to yourself. It starts today, okay? So if you're still unsure about whether your piles mean that you actually have hoarding disorder, don't get hung up on the term. There's no magic to owning up hoarding disorder, okay? Just look at the definition, all right, and decide whether the 3 criteria fit for you. As you learn together through the podcast, through work, maybe if you have a copy, you've got a copy of Conquer the Clutter, or you've gone to the library and you've borrowed it and you've read it, however you get that information, all right? Maybe you're going to start, hopefully you're going to start drilling down and learning and appreciating what the experiences are that you've had, what the beliefs are that you have that you're operating from that may not be moving you forward. There might be nothing wrong with the belief. It's just, it's absolutely not in the context of what you need to do here. Maybe it doesn't fit today. Maybe it doesn't fit this situation. The values that you operate from, one of those values, and I don't mean to critique it at all, it's just an example, is recycling. If you have clutter over your head, to the point when you are so overwhelmed and you're feeling badly about yourself, it's not the worst decision to decide to put your own mask on first and reduce the amount of recycling you're doing and let that stuff go if it has to go. And if it goes to the garbage and it goes to a landfill, that won't be forever. Promise yourself. The baby step you're going to take maybe is to allow yourself to honor the values you have, but right now you need to adapt them to necessity. All right. What are the fears? What are the fears that you have? Maybe those fears are influencing you to bring stuff in, not miss an opportunity, not miss a deal. Whatever those fear of letting go, somehow you'll lose that person, that experience, that whatever it is. All right. What fears are afoot? And the impulses. Are you living with some type of additional comorbidity or other disorder or other problem in your life that is influencing your acquiring behavior? Are you a really strong candidate for what we talked about last week? Cue reactivity. Are you an easy target to be cued so that you are so excited, you feel the need for this so much right away when you see it because you're highly receptive? It's not the worst thing, but we do need to put a context around that. All right. We can't be allowing other people, other priorities, their priority, their marketing priority to hold us hostage. All right. Make decisions consciously. The next step is to seek hands-on decluttering support. It is always easier when there are two people, always. It's easier even if that other person just sits there and talks to you in his company. It's amazing the positive effect. So that can either be a professional, all right, or it can be a well-chosen, trusted friend and ally. Please choose the person wisely. All right. Review the qualities of being a good clutter coach. Not every good friend you have is the candidate for this. All right. Go to chapter 16 of Conquer the Clutter and look at what are the qualities and characteristics of a good clutter buddy. All right. And if people don't have the book, if enough people don't have the book or they can't get to the library because of COVID, send me an email, send me in the chat box here that maybe I should do a whole podcast on being a good clutter buddy. All right. And that will tell you what you need to know about who you want to choose. A long time ago, I kept bumping my head and wondering, why can't we just get past this? And then it dawned on me. People really do know. You do know. All right. Sometimes it's only at an unconscious level. What you need to undo that overwhelming health and safety level of hoarding when it's really gotten out of hand. And sometimes, all right, you will need to invoke a crisis. You don't mean to, not consciously, but sometimes I think there may be an internal wisdom that people create the level of crisis they need in order to face what they unconsciously know they need to do it. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means that they will press that point until it requires enforcement intervention. But here's something I want you to think about, because that is pretty disorienting when somebody does an inspection, okay? And you're not comfortable with having people in your home. If you're someone who is now or might be facing that heightened stress, I can't even describe it for you, okay? Your ears go whoa, 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 whoa under the stress of it, of an enforced intervention. Maybe you need to ask how much crisis and loss of control. Do you actually need? Is that why it continues to build up? Is that what you need in order to handle the clutter in your life? Hopefully not. But if it is, then it is. Do you really need the clutter to become so severe that enforcement agents like the fire department, public health, bylaw, property standards, code compliance, child protective services, animal control need to intervene? All right. It's rare, but I believe it does happen. So ask yourself, is that what's happening here? And how can I get Elaine's help? Through the podcast, through topics, through the book, through whatever. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make a difference in my life? Okay. Do you need? Who will set? Because they will set and enforce limits for you, as well as for quite a while monitor your life choices related to the risks that you're creating by excessive clutter in your environment. If you don't want to give up that degree of control, please be willing to get the help for the underlying reasons that you are excessively acquiring or hoarding. Please get the help you need to get hoarding informed coaching to deal effectively with the clutter. And maybe what you really need is to figure out what are the characteristics of somebody who could be an assistant to me, not a bossy boots who's going to come in and tell you what to do, what you should do, what the right answer is, and completely overwhelm you. No, that is not a good clutter buddy. That person might be your best friend. You might trust them with the truth about your life, all right? But you do not want a task-focused individual in there. You want somebody who understands nobody has the answers for anybody else. They might have some ideas and some experience to offer. Inside you, you know the answers, all right? And what you need is you need the help, support, and coaching to find your own answers, because those are the answers you can live with, all right? Begin today as a start, all right? You can do this for sure. Whether immediately you can find a clutter buddy or not, that's a horse of a different color, all right? Begin today to say 2 phrases to yourself. If you have a pen, write them down. And do your absolute best to act on them as well as you possibly can. The first is, and I say this to myself 20 times a day and I don't hoard. So this is a normal thing people can say to themselves just to wake themselves up out of that temptation. I'll put it down just for now, or it doesn't, this time doesn't count. I'll do it later, okay? So the first thing I want you to start today saying to yourself is, don't put it down, put it away. And if you can't put it away, put it as close as possible to where it goes. And the second thing I want you to start saying to yourself today is, just do it now. It never gets easier. All right. And as I said, I say this to myself 20 times a day, because if you let yourself put it down and you misrepresent the truth, you say just for now, eventually you're going to have to do it anyway. But now if you put it down, rather than the one job to finish, all right, now literally you've got 5 jobs. Who wants to pick 5 jobs over one? You've got to notice wherever it is that often gets forgotten, all right? And you're not going to be any freer to do it when you see it the next time, all right? Your life isn't suddenly going to change when there's going to be all this extra time and mental energy, all right? You're going to have to pick it up anyway. You're going to have to remember, what was I doing with this thing? Why is it here? You're going to have to figure that one out. All right. Then you're going to have to figure out, where does it go? You know how to figure out the permanent place, and we will go over that, remind you of it in this podcast. But where does it go? And you're going to have to put it where you should have put it in the first place. Just do it now. It really, really does start preventing the buildup at the continuing buildup. Those two phrases, if you are really, really strict with yourself, all right, make a big, big difference. And if you start saying and following through on those two statements, you now, that 15 minutes a day, you're working the piles this way. And just do it now, Elaine. It never gets easier. There is no just for now. Just for now is a lie, just like the checks in the mail. Okay, there is no just for now. All right, so now look what you're doing. In manageable ways, you're working those piles from both ends. That is a winning proposition. You're preventing new piles. You'll be solving the clutter, the pile problem, from both ends of the spectrum. Remediating what has built up and preventing new wins. What a payoff. What a payoff. And you'll gradually start noticing that some areas are looking a little clearer. Okay, now let's start figuring out what started the accumulation. All right, because this can be a piece of one of those key factors that you need to work on. Okay, the underlying reasons it happened in the first place, and cleaning up the environment, clearing it up, picking it up, sorting it. Okay, so wherever you are right now, and I can see some of you, just imagine that I'm sitting beside you. Choose a space that particularly irritates you, that you want us to look at first, and just consider what makes up this specific, not the whole, but this specific accumulation. What are the component parts of it? What types of items? Are they just a mishmash of things? No problem. There's no judgment there. Or are they particular types of things? All right. What influenced you to place each of these items where they are and leave them there? You ran out of time. You ran out of energy. You didn't know where to put them. You knew where to put them, but you couldn't get there. You were overwhelmed. And by the second question you were asking yourself, you were like, who knows? What influenced you to put them there in the first place? Because that may be the baseline of the issue. Some people keep themselves so busy outside, avoiding being home, so busy inside, being distracted by demands of other people, that they don't leave enough time, enough energy to even think about it. If your mind can't conceive of it, if you can't get a handle on it here, you can't make it happen here. These two things are connected. Ask yourself, what influenced you? All right. And when you do this exercise, and you probably will come back and listen to this podcast again, I want you to please note the reasons that might be different for different types of things. We've talked in the past about sentimental attachment, intrinsic attachment, where you assign what you believe is an objective value and meaning, and an aesthetic attachment. You just love it. It just fills your soul. All right. So what are the reasons that it's still there? Third question rather. What was the original plan for the area that has gotten cluttered? Is that vision still clear in your mind? You can't hit a target if you don't know what the target looks like and you don't keep that target, that goal visually. If you can't see it in your mind, how are you going to make it happen? You absolutely need to be able to keep that vision in your mind. I want that to be an area where I can invite friends in, where I can just have some solitude. I know there are piles in other rooms, but you know what? This is my sanctuary. This is a place where I can do something that I really like doing. I love cooking. And so the kitchen is off limits. I am not going to build up clutter in the kitchen because I love cooking, or I love cooking for others, or what was the original plan and how vivid is it still in your mind? I want you to formulate that vision again, and I want you to fill it in before I talk to you next week with the brightest colors so that you can see it in, it's almost screaming at you, okay? What were the ideas? Where did that plan, that vision come from? What idea did you have? Maybe you saw it in a book. Maybe somebody else's house is like that. When I go there, I feel so relaxed. I want my place to be. All right. Maybe it's what you grew up with. Maybe it's what you had in the past before life gave you a bit of a knocking down and you got overwhelmed. What needs does it express? What needs? I want friends over. I want a workspace. I want a craft space. I'm sick of trying to do it on my knees with products all over the place. I'm sick of the chaos of not being able to find what are your needs or what is your vision behind that plan. All right. If you haven't done that, might be a good exercise this week. Not in stark relief in detail, but just go around your different spaces and ask yourself, how do I really want to live in this space? Okay. Not what can I give it? What can it give me? How can it fill me? How can it fill me? What can it give me? Another thing I want you to check in on, okay, because this often happens. What events, life events or choices prompted you to alter the plan? I worked with a young girl, not so young, a young lady one time, and when I was allowed to come into her apartment, on the left-hand side by the door, there was this serious monolith. And you had to be very careful with your footing. There was one chair for her to sit on. And this monolith occupied probably a quarter of the main room of the apartment. And it was 8 feet tall. When we finally started to deconstruct that, we found a box, her suitcase, an unpacked suitcase, and a packed suitcase, sorry, it had not been unpacked. And we found a box. And it was an interesting place to find these things. You don't often at the bottom of an 8-foot pile find an unpacked suitcase. And so I'm always curious about what patterns I see or what is unusual in the pattern I have seen. What stands out against the horizon or what isn't there that you would expect to be there? And generally those two things say something, they say a lot. It turned out that she was doing fine, all right? But her dad passed away, and she went to the funeral out of town. And her dad, I mean, it's a long story, but her dad was her beacon in the darkness, okay? It was a very problematic, challenging growing up. And so it was like she was untethered emotionally, spiritually, physically. No one to go to now. The bag was more than she could unpack. She couldn't even face unpacking it. And the package, every year her dad would make Christmas cakes, and he liked to bake, and he would bake some stuff and send her a Christmas care package if she wasn't able to go home for Christmas, because sometimes work prevented it. And it was the package. And when we opened it, it was the Christmas package that had arrived just after she got back. I guess he put it in the mail already. That was the coup de grace. That was a really good example of what I'm talking about. An event. You remember what I said before about that third path? Not the most organized, but managing. And then either a major life event happens that just brings you to your knees, or a series of smaller ones, but in close proximity of time, so you can't re-stabilize in between. That's a really good example of this fifth point. What events or choices prompted you to alter your plan so that now it's a pile instead of a plan? When was the last time you were able to assign permanent places for things and actually get them to those places? I want you to have some sense of how long this problem, this issue has been brewing, because just because you notice it now, sometimes people get impatient with themselves. Sometimes they get really harsh and defeated when they realize what the problem is, and they can't just turn it over on a dime, okay? It didn't happen overnight, and you don't have to fix it overnight. So no self-judgment. That 15 minutes a day, and there is no just for now. Just do it now. It never gets easier. Those two things, I swear, if you do nothing else, those two things sooner or later will get you to where you need to be. But if you can figure out, was there an event that happened that brought me to my knees? And do I have unfinished business with that issue? All right. Do I need grief counseling? Because I'm stuck in a grief response. I'm still managing to go to work, but life has no value. It has no juice. It has no real meaning. And I feel alone, and why bother? I mean, why bother? Is there some unresolved issue that from life events that you need to do some additional work on? And how can I help you? Even if that's not about the hoarding, even if that's about something else, how can I help you find that resource so that you can add it to your care package? Where would these things normally be kept, okay, and still be useful? If you were to close your eyes right now, all right, touching and holding each one of these things in turn, where would the first place be that you would look for it? Because that is its permanent place in your environment. You will always look for it there. Just accept it. That's where you'll always look for it first. And so that is its permanent place. And it's okay. Even if nobody else agrees with you. This is your home. Your rules apply. Your logic is good enough. It's just that it needs to be accessible. Stuffed in a drawer. Stuffing is not the same thing as sorting. Stuffing is the energy that you feel, the message in your head. I don't know what to do with this. Where's there an empty spot? Okay, there. Okay, done. Out of my, okay, out of sight, out of mind. That is not sorting or resolving. And don't settle for that. If you can't figure out where you would normally keep the item, try the following, okay? For now, just for now, okay, let's accept that temporarily these things are where they are. They're in a pile. Did you begin to lose focus about the plan, and if so, when? What else was happening at or around that time that interfered with you carrying through? Did something happen during that time frame when the buildup began? Did you start to put a plan in place and then encounter actual barriers to moving forward? Are those barriers still evident? Are you still struggling with them? It could be anything. Listen to what you tell yourself and trust it. Write it down so that you have a record when you have these insights, or record it on your phone, some place to go back to. All right, because sometimes insights are fleeting. If you have dreams, okay, and you remember something from a dream, sleep is the time we try to heal. Your system tries to heal your mind, body, and spirit. Okay, so when you look at the collections of things, okay, mail or paper is a biggie. Okay, it's tough. Dealing with paper is hard for most people. You really need to be determined because there's a lot of paper in this world. All right, so is it unopened mail that builds up? Is it bills that build up? Have you thought, instead of getting all those late notices and paying interest and penalties, have you thought of just looking at the last 3 bills, estimating what the average is, and put an automatic payment in on your bank account online so that you're never overdue? Will that take enough of the pressure off? Because if you allow too much pressure to build up on you, it will bring you to a grinding halt. All right? Receipts with common dates. That's another thing too. When it's been kind of a short-term buildup, like in the last 2 years, that short term, believe it or not, sometimes when that is clear that that's when it started, it's odd how sometimes when you get to the bottom layer of that pile, you start finding receipts and documents that share a date range. All right, what was happening then? All right, what was happening then? Just so that you stop blaming yourself. We do the best we can with what we know and what we have at the time. The trick is to find what you need and accept no substitutes. Are you better at starting multiple things rather than finishing them? Let's decide the permanent place starting now for each item, okay? And try this. If the item, so there are some conditions about finding the place. The item must not be irreversibly contaminated. If it's irreversibly contaminated, we need to have a different discussion. The place, that dedicated permanent place, needs to be where the item is normally used. Not any old place at all where there's space. Where do you use it? And optimally, now maybe you can't make this happen as a first step, but optimally, it should be no more than 3 to 4 steps away from where it's used most often. And the reason for that is because if you can achieve that, you will exponentially maximize the likelihood that you'll put that thing back after you're finished and not return to the pattern of putting it down just for now. There's something magic. I don't know what it is. I've asked clients to test it, and there's something about having to take that 5th step that the little voice inside perks up and says, see, it's not so easy. Let's put it down just for now. All right, don't give in to temptation. Try to find that permanent place within 3 to 4 steps of where those things are used. But the permanent place must also be accessible. All right, now if we're talking about books on a shelf, I have news for you, and it's not good news, okay? 3 deep on a shelf is not normally accessible, okay? Now that depends on the item. Spices on a spice rack or in a spice shelf, that might be okay. Books on a shelf, reasonably, if you can't access them, this is not the solution you're looking for, okay? As long as you are not creating an imminent health or safety hazard, take each thing one at a time, just as if I was there with you. I would be cueing you. How would I be cueing you? I would be giving you one thing at a time to attend to so that you can get away from that sense of being overwhelmed by the bulk. Be your own coach. One thing at a time is good enough. It beats the alternative. Pick up one thing. Where is its permanent place? Go and put it there. All right? Or as close to there as you possibly can. Now, it does feel sometimes like you're just moving piles. Some people say, well, what's the point? It was in a pile here, it's in a pile there. It's a different kind of pile, folks. It's a pile where it's going to go. All right? And we work in this space right here, okay? And when we get to there, a lot of other spaces will have been made available, will have been freed up. Those spaces are not, those piles are not equal. And then you can deal with what's in that pile. All right, there is a logic to it and it works. If you deal with those things when you get to that area, all right, and you're having any difficulty, go back to the podcast and I'll go over it next week, okay, the scaling process, just to remind you. Or go to the book, to the chapter relay and scaling process. All right. Okay. Now, let's consider 2 questions. Generally, something prompted your original plan for the area to be changed. And it might well have been a valid reason to change that plan. However, what it also means, we have to accept this, is that the clutter still occurred. The fundamental question is, write this down. What is maintaining right now? What is maintaining this particular cluttered environment? Don't try to do it if you have a lot of clutter. Don't try to do this for the whole shooting match, okay? Pick an area because the reasons might be different depending on the area. What's maintaining this particular cluttered environment? The first 3 things you think of, make note of, because probably one of those is pretty much on target. All right. The second question I want you to ask yourself, what really stuck? And no self-blame. Put that should shovel away. Okay. Stop digging yourself deeper in a hole. What stops you from resolving the accumulation? And even if you can't resolve it right away, is it one of those things we talked about before? Maybe it's a belief you have. Maybe it's a fear you have. Maybe it's unresolved, whatever, all right? An unresolved issue that you need to deal with. Maybe it's it's another factor, all right? But it's something, I can tell you that. It is something. And you have the answers inside you. As you look at this space we're talking about that you have in your mind's eye, the next question you must ask yourself is, okay, now that I've thought about what's maintaining it and what stops me from resolving it, what keeps me in that state of being unresolved? Is that the same or is it different? Because what keeps me, that is a current situation. That's happening in the here and now. What stops you might have been a barrier from recent past to far past. What's maintaining it, that probably is a current activity as well, or a current fear, belief. All right. Do your thoughts, fears, beliefs, or lifestyle habits prevent you from resolving the situation? Write that down. Thoughts, what are they? When you think of the clutter, when you look at the clutter, what are your thoughts? Do you defeat yourself right out of the gate? Fears. If I let it go, I might need it. Surely somebody could use it. It's too good to just let go. I paid good money for that and I haven't had my value out of it. Aren't I going to feel silly if I let it go and then I need it? What's it going to harm? Not going to hurt anybody if I just keep that additional whatever it is. Space and time is finite. Those piles are made up of small items, bigger items, more items, and each one of those is attached to a thought, fear, belief, or lifestyle habit. Have you gotten so overwhelmed by your clutter that you can't move forward to uncluttered? Do you find making decisions to be more difficult than you can manage right now? Break it down. Break it down into smaller pieces. Maybe it's going to be one item at a time. And when you're doing that, all right, don't look at the rest of it and defeat yourself by saying, this is going to go on forever. There's so much more. You'll get to it. It's okay if you have to come back to this section more than once. These questions, thoughts, fears, beliefs, lifestyle habits, they're like peeling an onion. Okay, undoubtedly, if you've got enough clutter that you're devoting an hour every Wednesday morning to being with me, there are multiple layers to why it happened. And there are multiple layers to the progress that you're going to make. Accept that there is nothing wrong with it. Okay, you're not some flawed, broken individual. Okay, and just complete one step at a time. In the meantime, start with one item at a time. There is no just for now. Just do it now. It never gets easier. And let's consider how to approach this situation effectively at this point in time, not getting defeated by the past. You don't have to wait for the perfect constellation of events to move forward, because the truth is we never, ever, ever have all the information that would be useful. And we never, ever have the perfect things that would make the job easier. Do the best job you can do today, starting now, okay? My guidelines are 2, and I'm going to, apparently there are 3 because there's ABC. We're going to end with this, okay? And then I'm going to go to the chat box. First of all, when you're deciding these things, absolutely respect the relationship you have with these items. All right, respect it. You may decide moving down the line to resolution not to remain with that attachment or relationship. You might, just like friends, you might change your friends. That's okay, but respect it. There's nothing wrong with that. B, respect the relationship that not only you have with your things, but with your preferences. Okay, so you've got somebody in the background going, wow, that's not, oh, don't let that go. That could be really, respect your viewpoint on it, your preferences. That's the only way you're going to be able to get to, I can live with the decision I made. All right? Because those are the things you don't regret later. And the third guideline is respect working at your pace, whatever that pace is. Be very, very careful. Starting is the hardest part. All right. I remember I started out by saying there is something wrong with people who get up in the morning and say, gee, I can hardly wait to do something I don't want to do, and I get to do it for 15 whole minutes. Well, while that may be true, all right, starting is always going to be the hardest part. Don't expect it to be a pleasure. It's sort of like going to the dentist. All right. But you're really glad you had the work done later. All right. However, keep yourself within, if you're just starting out, at 15 minutes and stop at 15 minutes. Don't go to 16, 20, 25, an hour, 2 hours. Here's why, and I can't say this enough. You won't go back to it. Once you get started, you do get on a roll and you think, I could achieve a whole lot. It literally is what you will make yourself do. Self-regulation every single day. That tiny bit you do every single day will get you to where you need to be and keep you there. When you get overstimulated and you blow the bank of energy, the next time tomorrow, when you're thinking about, okay, no, I just don't have that much steam in the tank, but you will always have 15 minutes. All right. It's a basic rule. Please respect it. Okay. We're going to end now, and then I'm going to just see what we have in the chat box here. Okay. Dina, also we can remember the animals, yes, who were lost in the war. They may also, and some of them were service people, not just pets and things. Maureen, greetings all, good wishes to Elaine, Jim, and all of you. Dina, please do that session on being a clutter buddy. Okay. Okay, we've got another one. Elaine, I'd like the session on being a clutter buddy as well. Wonderful. Put away. So this is from somebody privately. On the put it away now front, I put my keys on the holder next to the front door, and as long as I do it, I'm never wasting time. I know, and energy. Isn't it frustrating? Looking for where I have my phone is my downfall. I have brightly colored checkbooks so that I don't lose it. I've got a brightly colored color I hate, lime green, double container for my glasses. Because I've gotten to the point where I need to wear one kind or another when I drive. However, last year I put it down, and imagine around Christmas when I was putting things away and spend the next 8 months looking for it. It's true. It is so frustrating. Okay, where am I here now? Okay. Elaine says to everyone, I'm working through the sorting, and finding a good place for it can be a two-step. It is sometimes. As you think this first place works well, but then you find it doesn't. But try to make it no more than 3 to 4 steps. All right, 3 to 4 steps, and keeping it accessible. Paper, old manuals. You're right, old manuals. Things I might study plus books. We could have a look at that. That would be an interesting topic for another podcast. For those people who are project people, or they have interests that they like to dedicate their time to, and unfortunately requires a great amount of resources. That would be an interesting one. Yes, thank you, Pat. Stuffing in a drawer is not sorting. Great saying. Okay. What about there are many life situations and there are traumas? I can't think of one that started or when. Was it when I was first on my own at 17? Life just got more, it does get more complicated. And then if you never had to learn the skills of self-management or environmental management. Somebody did it for you, or it wasn't an expectation. It can be a rude awakening. All right, it's true. I feel overwhelmed just trying to think where and when it started. So start now. You know what? If you give some thought to that question, when did it start? That's really only attached to, is that problem still in my life? Because sometimes it's a multifaceted solution. Sometimes if it's grief, along with hoarding work, you also need to do some grief work. I'm working with a few people right now, or boundaries and limits. All right. Do I have everything from my family's home when they closed the family home and nobody else wanted it, and I was made to feel guilty and obliged, and I took it all, and here I am, and yeah, okay, that's it. Now what's that going to do me? Well, maybe the lesson that really needs to be taught and learned there is boundaries and limits. What about me? All right, what about my needs? What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make a difference? Sometimes what I need is no, and the right comfort, the comfort with the right to say it and mean it. Okay. Thank you for sharing your recollections about your father. They were very moving. Thank you. He was a great, great guy. Very, very lucky to have been his daughter. Sand. Yes, it is a huge challenge, as I don't have room for a bulky file cabinet, nor do I want one. I'm trying a binder system. Well, that would be good too. I've invested in a heavy-duty 3-hole punch, various types of bind. Yes, that's true. I have, you can see behind here as well, where am I, with my topics. It's not as sophisticated as Sans, but yes, sometimes when you want information, those things you want to study, things you want to get back to, yeah, you know what, go get some recycled binders, get a labeler, label what the topic is, and a 3-hole punch, and you're away to the races. Maureen. Oh yes, all that useful written information. Quite a challenge. I know it is. We'll get there. I feel connected to the show. Thank you, Tammy. I dealt with the problem of misplacing my phone by getting a Google device. Oh, really? Is that Google Home? Where's my phone? And it starts ringing. Really? I'd like to know more about that, Deanne. Because that literally, I have my phone with me all the time, and I go like a bat out of proverbial. And so quite often I think, okay, where's the phone? Where's the phone? Okay, yes, please do a project session. I will, Alina. And one on different types of grief, please. That would be a really, really good one. I just thought of grief as a whole, but you're right. There are different types of grief. Thank you so much for joining me today. I now have to go and do an interview for a conference that's going to be a virtual conference being sponsored out of Alberta by a housing developer who wants to bring the whole topic of hoarding, because I guess this could be an issue. Well, I know it can be an issue when people are selling houses and buying houses. And sometimes they can't close the deal or get themselves mentally to close the deal on the new purchase because they can't fathom how they're going to manage the close down of the old purchase. There's some nodding going on there. Oh, Nora, you're funny. Okay, thank you, folks. We'll see you next week, and we will carry on with this topic, okay? And I will get started on a whole podcast on paper, on crafts and collections, and what was the other thing that was there? I'll go through this in different types of grief. All right. And so we've got some topics coming up. If there are any unusual but common types of crafts or projects, would you send it to me in an email so that I can have a heads up? Might as well cover all the bases at once. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
You too. Thank you.